Joe George and Grant Wheeler were a couple of Cochise County cowboys, and they decided to try to up their station in life by robbing a train. It was becoming very popular, and they had 9 train robberies right here in Arizona between 1887 and 1922. So it was a popular place. The way I should mention here that in 1890, around there, New Mexico made robbing trains, gave it the death penalty. And because you know, that's pretty serious business. And so are the outlaws going to rob a train in New Mexico? No, they're going to sit there, watch it pass through Doubtful Canyon, and when you come into Arizona, then they'll rob the train in Arizona. Only one guy got hanged ever in the West for robbing a train, and that was Black Jack Ketchum. And the hangman miscalculated the rope, the drop. Jack lost his head over it, and that might have had something to do with why they rescinded the law a little later. But finally, Arizona thinks, hey, if New Mexico is going to have, these guys are just waiting to get into Arizona to rob the trains, we'll get the law, we'll pass that law too. But there's one problem with a law like that. Some of these outlaws were gentlemen, and they wouldn't hurt anybody. They're just like Butch Cassidy, you know, they're just train robbers. We as a jury, we won't convict. So literally, you could actually rob a train, and with the death penalty hanging over you, the jury would acquit you. You could get away with train robbery for a very short time, and they figured it out. It didn't take them long to figure out, hey, we better do something about this death penalty because the juries are not finding them guilty. And so both Arizona and New Mexico dropped the death penalty capital offense for train robbery. But for a short time it was, long enough to get Black Jack Ketchum. Well, anyway, Grant Wheeler and Joe George are going to rob the train as it leaves. This is 1895, just as it leaves Wilcox and goes up that incline on the way up to Cochise Station. And so they go into town, Soto's hardware store, and they buy a box of dynamite. And just to throw people off, they're saying, we're going to go into mining. We're going to start being miners. And of course, people say, you guys, all you are is cowboys, not good ones at that. But Joe George is kind of a surly, sour guy, and Grant's a young, good-looking kid, and from a good family in Utah. But they're train robbers now. So they go out, they plant the dynamite up a ways, and then leave their horses hobbled up there. They walk back down, and then they jump on the train, on the engine, because it's going so slow. And they jump on the engine, and they, again, the same old routine. They order the conductor to disconnect the cars, leave the passengers down below waiting, and the mail car, and they'll just take the engine and the express car up and blow up the safe. And so they get up there, and they go into the express car, and they look around, and there's a safe there, all right, and there are about 10 sacks of silver, full of silver pesos. And they're thinking, and at this time, by the way, they're called adobe dollars, as adobe, and because they're Mexican dollars. And so there's all these sacks of silver dollars, silver pesos lying there, and they ignore that. They think if they got them lying out here in the open, there must be really something in the safe. So they decide, well, let's stick some dynamite in there. These boys had never played with dynamite before, and they put a few sticks in there, and then light the fuse, and they run out and into the desert and lie down on the ground and cover their heads and waited. Well, there's a little explosion, and when the smoke clears, they go back in. The door on the safe is still intact. So they said, well, let's try a little bit more. So they put some more dynamite down there, a little more this time, and same thing, light the fuse, run out, cover up their heads, and wait. And another loud boom. And so they come back, and it's still intact. They said, well, we'll fix this. They took all of the dynamite they had left in the box, and then they put the silver pesos on top of it for ballast. And they figured this will blow that safe open. And they light the fuse, and out into the desert they go again, and cover up their heads. And this is not a boom. This is a kaboom. It must have shaken all the way from Dos Cabezas to Dragoon Springs. And when the smoke clears, they go back in, and there's the safe. The door is wide open. And where are the pesos? They've gone flying into the desert like shrapnel. And one even embedded in a telephone pole alongside the tracks. They found it later. And but silver pesos just went everywhere. And so they think, well, just money's in here. But there's no money in there, or just a few bucks. So they cuss a little bit and stick the money, what few dollars they had, in their pockets, and get on the horses and ride away, foiled. Well, the train backs into town, still a train robbery, and it, not only that, it blew the car to pieces. It was the whole express car is in splinters, and so they back into town and announce a robbery. Well, would you think a posse's going to form? No, they didn't have much luck raising a posse, because as soon as people found out there were pesos lying all over the desert, they went home and got their rakes, and they went out to rake. That had to be the best manicured piece of real estate this side of Paradise Valley. And I've told that story a number of times. At one time, I get an email the next day, and the guy says, "Hey, I'm a treasure hunter. Can you tell me about where that robbery was? I'm going to go out and see if there's any of them pesos still there." And I say, "Fella, that was 100 years ago. I don't think there'll be. If they are, they're probably, if they're heavy enough, they probably got buried by now, by the elements." And but people still like those kinds of stories. Well, in fact, that leads me into a lost treasure story, because this deal between Wheeler and George has been turned into a treasure story. I won't tell you which historian started it, but I really have my doubts. And I won't say his name because he's a good friend. But there's a story about that Grant Wheeler. They took $84,000 in that robbery. Now we know that's not true, but he said they buried it in a cave in Dos Cabezas, and left it there in saddlebags, and stashed it, and then they were going to come back and get it when the heat cooled down a little bit. But there's more to that story, because they did a month later. they robbed again the same train. Same crew. It's like, "Hey guys, here we are again." and so I said, "Hi Grant, how's Joe? How are you? Yeah, I'm doing fine. How are the kids?" But they stop the train and do the same routine. This is over by Doubtful Canyon along the Arizona-New Mexico line, and they've got their dynamite stashed. The same standard operating procedure, and they get the engine and what they thought was the express car up a road about 2 miles, and when they go to open up the express car, they find out they've switched the cars. Usually it was the engine and a Wells Fargo express car and the mail car, and they reversed it, and the two boys didn't know the difference. So they got mad, and they said, "Oh, get on out of here, go on," and let them go. And they blew up the dynamite, but blowing up a car, turning one to splinters, is not cool with Southern Pacific Railroad. So they've got the detectives on their trail, and one of the detectives is Billy Breckenridge, who's famous from the Cochise County War at Tombstone. He was Johnny Behan's deputy down there during the Wyatt Earp days. Well, anyway, he and C.S. Fly, the famous photographer, is now sheriff of Cochise County. And Fly was a man of many talents. And so they're out there, they're hot on their trail, and somewhere along the line, the boys were going to go to Colorado, I guess, and until things cooled off. And seems that George had a bad snoring problem. And Grant Wheeler couldn't stand his snoring, and he was afraid it would give him away. If a posse was coming up, he was snoring so loud. So he decides to go back to Utah. And he goes back and reunites with his family in Utah. and Joe George goes down to Mexico, where he gets into an argument with a vaquero, and it gets shot and killed. So George is dead. When the posse, actually Breckenridge and Fly, catch up with Grant Wheeler, he sees it's up, and I think rather than humiliate his family, he takes his own life. He pulls a pistol and shoots himself. So both guys are dead. But how this story about a lost treasure hidden in the caves, when they blew the train up, and there were just a few dollars in the safe. There was no $84,000 in that safe. And so, but anyway, it just shows you how these treasure stories go, and it ends by saying somewhere in a cave in Dos Cabezas. I've been to Dos Cabezas, and I don't think there are many caves up there, but where you could hide that money and somebody not find it sooner or later. They should have never been outlaws. Some guys have a knack for it. These guys don't.
Thank you for watching this episode of Mysteries of the Superstition Mountains.